Picture this. Early spring. The stores are bare, the roads are quiet, and outside your back door, nothing but cold, empty ground. Most people would feel helpless in that moment, but not you, because tucked away in a cool, dry corner of your home, you have 8 small packets of seeds. And those 8 packets hold the power to feed your entire family for months. Welcome to the Provident Acre. Today, we're going inside the only survival seed vault your family will ever need. Let's get into it. When I think about what a survival garden really needs to do, I always come back to one question. Will this feed my family, or will it just feed them a little? There's a big difference between a garden that produces food and a garden that produces enough food. The seeds in this first section are what I call the Calorie Foundations. These are the crops that fill bellies, the ones that our grandparents and great-grandparents built entire winters around. And when you understand why they work, you'll never look at your garden the same way again. Seed number 1, dried beans. Phaseolus vulgaris. Varieties like pinto, black bean, or Jacob's cattle. Let's start with what might be the single most important seed on this entire list, dried beans. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Beans? That's your big survival crop? But stay with me here, because the numbers tell a story that's hard to argue with. 1 pound of dried beans contains roughly 1,500 calories. A single plant can produce anywhere from half a pound to a full pound of dried beans over a season, depending on the variety and your conditions. Plant a modest 20-foot row, and you're looking at enough beans to feed a family of 4 for several weeks, from a strip of garden smaller than most living room sofas. I remember the first time my family did a real bean harvest. We had planted a small section of pinto beans, maybe 30 feet of row, almost as an experiment. We weren't sure what to expect. When we finally sat down to shell and weigh what we'd grown, we had just over 11 pounds of dried beans. My youngest kept saying, "That's a lot of soup, Mom." And she was right. That was a lot of soup. Enough soup to maror. Beans do something else too that most calorie crops don't. They fix nitrogen in your soil. That means they're actually improving your garden while they grow. A survival garden that includes beans is a garden that takes care of itself a little. Choosing your variety. For survival storage, you want an open-pollinated or heirloom variety. This is non-negotiable. Hybrid seeds won't reliably reproduce true to type, which means you can't save them season after season. Heirloom beans like Jacob's cattle, Hidatsa shield figure, or a classic pinto will give you seeds you can replant for years, potentially for the rest of your life. Growing beans. Beans are warm season crops. They don't like frost, and they don't love being transplanted, so you'll direct sow them right into the ground once your soil temperature reaches about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. They prefer full sun and well-drained soil. Beyond that, they're remarkably forgiving. I've grown beans in clay-heavy soil with no amendments and still pulled a solid harvest. They want to grow. For a survival garden, focus on bush beans for ease, or pole beans for higher yield in a smaller footprint. If you have a fence line or a simple trellis already standing, pole beans will reward you generously for the room. Harvesting for storage. Leave your bean pods on the plant until they're fully dry and starting to rattle when you shake them. If rain is coming before they're ready, pull the whole plant and hang it upside down in a dry, ventilated space. The pods will finish drying off the plant just fine. Shell them out, spread them on a screen to finish curing for a week or 2, and then store them in glass jars or sealed containers in a cool, dark location. Properly dried and stored beans will last 3 to 5 years with minimal nutrition loss. Some heritage varieties have been found viable at 10 years and beyond. Seed number 2, field corn. Zea maize. Varieties like Bloody Butcher, Hickory King, or Glass Gem. The second seed in our Calorie Foundation section is one that most modern gardeners overlook completely, and it's one of the oldest survival crops in North American history. Field corn. Not sweet corn, not the kind you pick in August and eat at a summer barbecue. Field corn is the kind you let dry fully on the stalk, the kind that gets ground into meal, boiled into porridge, or stored whole to be processed through winter. For thousands of years, dried corn was the backbone of food security for families and entire communities across this continent. It's calorie-dense, stores beautifully, and can be prepared in more ways than most people realize. I'll share something personal here. A few years back, we had an unusually wet summer, the kind that wiped out a lot of what we'd planted early in the season. Lettuce, gone. Squash, struggling. But the field corn? It barely noticed. It just kept growing. And when October came, we had rows of deep red and burgundy bloody butcher cobs hanging in our barn, drying in the autumn air. There's something deeply reassuring about seeing that, something that goes beyond just the food itself. Why field corn over sweet corn for storage? Sweet corn has been bred for sugar and tenderness. It's wonderful fresh, but dries poorly and doesn't store with the same nutrition or caloric density. Field corn varieties have been developed over generations specifically for drying, grinding, and long-term storage. For survival purposes, they're not even in the same category. Growing corn. Corn is a heavy feeder and a heavy producer. It needs full sun, consistent moisture during tasseling and pollination, and enough space to plant in blocks rather than single rows. Because corn is wind-pollinated, and block planting ensures good kernel fill. A block of 4 rows, each 10 feet long, is a reasonable starting point for a family garden. You'll be surprised how much it produces. Processing and storage. Leave the ears on the stalk until the husks are papery and fully brown, usually after the first frost. Pull them, peel back the husks to expose the cobs, and hang them in a dry place with good airflow. Once the kernels are rock hard and dry, shell them off the cob by hand or with a simple corn sheller. Store in sealed containers, away from moisture and pests. Ground into cornmeal, field corn becomes the base for cornbread, johnny cakes, polenta, and porridge. One crop, many meals. Seed number 3, winter squash. Cucurbita maxima or moscata, varieties like butternut, Hubbard, or Long Island cheese pumpkin. The third seed in our Calorie Foundation section is one that checks more boxes than almost anything else you could grow. Winter squash. When our children were small, we had a running joke in our house that winter was just squash season. Butternut soup, roasted Hubbard with butter and salt. These weren't survival rations. They were real meals that our kids asked for. That matters. When times are hard, food that your family actually wants to eat is worth more than a stockpile nobody will touch. Choosing your variety. For the longest storage, choose varieties with hard, thick skins. Hubbard squash and Long Island cheese pumpkin routinely store 5 to 6 months. Butternut is slightly less long-keeping, but enormously productive and beloved by most families. Blue Hodakio and Marina di Chioggia are also excellent choices with exceptional storage lives. Growing squash. Squash vines need space, that's the honest truth. A single Hubbard plant can sprawl 10 to 15 feet in every direction, but that sprawl is productive. One plant can give you 5 to 10 large squash, each one weighing several pounds. If you have a fence, a hillside, or simply don't mind squash wandering through the garden, they'll reward you generously for the room. They love warmth, resent frost, and should be started from seed after your last frost date, or started indoors 2 to 3 weeks earlier and transplanted once the soil is warm. Harvesting and curing. The secret to long winter squash storage is in the curing. After harvest, set your squash in a warm location, ideally 80 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, for 10 to 14 days. This hardens the skin, heals any small surface cuts, and dramatically extends storage life. After curing, move them to a cool, dry location between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. A spare bedroom, a root cellar, even a cool basement corner, all of these work well. Check them periodically through winter. If one begins to soften, use it immediately. The rest will keep beautifully. Together, beans, field corn, and winter squash, these three crops form what the Haudenosaunee people called the Three Sisters. For centuries, this combination fed families through hard winters, not just because of the calories, but because of how these crops support each other in the garden. Corn provides a trellis for beans, beans fix nitrogen for corn, and squash shades the ground, keeping moisture in and weeds down. It is one of the oldest and most proven intercropping systems in the history of human agriculture, and it belongs in every survival garden. When people plan a survival garden, they almost always think about calories first, and that makes sense. Hunger is immediate and urgent. But there's a quieter threat that families face in long-term food disruptions, and it doesn't announce itself the way hunger does. It's nutrient deficiency. Historically, communities that survived famines on staple crops alone, corn, potatoes, grains, still suffered. They suffered from scurvy when vitamin C ran out, from night blindness when vitamin A disappeared, from fatigue and weakness when iron and folate dropped too low. Calories keep you alive, nutrients keep you well. The three seeds in this section are chosen specifically because they are nutritional powerhouses. They grow quickly, produce reliably, and fill the gaps that calorie crops leave open. In a long-term survival situation, these may be the seeds that keep your family not just fed, but strong. Seed number 4, kale, Brassica oleracea. Varieties like lacinato, dinosaur, red Russian, or Siberian. If I could only grow one green vegetable in a survival garden, it would be kale, without question. Kale is cold hardy to a degree that most vegetables simply aren't. It can survive temperatures down to the low 20s Fahrenheit, and in many climates, it keeps producing straight through a mild winter with no protection at all. When the first hard frost comes, something remarkable happens to kale. The cold converts some of its starches to sugars, and the leaves actually become sweeter. Frost doesn't damage kale, it improves it. We've had years here on our homestead where we were harvesting kale in December and January, brushing snow off the leaves before we cut them. That image stays with me because in a survival scenario, fresh greens in the middle of winter aren't just nutritionally valuable, they're a genuine morale boost. There's something about a bowl of warm kale soup in February that makes everything feel more manageable. Nutritional profile. 1 cup of cooked kale provides over 1,000% of your daily vitamin K, more than 100% of your vitamin A, and nearly 70% of your vitamin C. It's a solid source of calcium, iron, and B vitamins. In a diet centered around dried beans and corn, kale fills almost every nutritional gap. Growing kale. Kale is one of the most beginner-friendly vegetables you can grow. Direct sow in spring 6 weeks before your last frost date, or again in late summer for a fall and winter harvest. It prefers rich, well-drained soil and consistent moisture, but tolerates a surprising range of conditions. Space plants about 18 inches apart and harvest outer leaves as needed, leaving the center crown to continue producing. For seed saving, kale will overwinter, in most zones, and bolts in its second year. Allow the seed pods to dry on the plant, collect them before they shatter, and thresh to release the seeds. Store in a cool, dark, dry place. Kale seeds remain viable for 4 to 5 years. Seed number 5, amaranth. Amaranthus, varieties like burgundy, golden giant, or Hopi red. This next seed is one that surprises almost everyone who hears it for the first time and becomes one of their favorites once they understand it. Amaranth. Amaranth is what I'd call a dual-purpose survival crop. The leaves are edible greens, mild, spinach-like, and highly nutritious that you can harvest throughout the growing season. And then, at the end of the season, the plant produces enormous seed heads containing thousands upon thousands of tiny grain seeds. Seeds that are packed with complete protein, iron, calcium, and lysine, an amino acid that's actually lacking in corn and wheat. The combination of a leafy green and a storable grain from a single plant is almost unmatched in the survival garden world. I grew amaranth almost by accident the first time. A neighbor gave me a handful of seeds and told me to just scatter them. I did. What came up was one of the most dramatic-looking plants in our entire garden. Tall, bold, with deep burgundy seed heads that drooped beautifully in late summer. My kids thought they were decorative. They were not wrong, but they were also dinner. Why amaranth belongs in the survival seed list? Amaranth is heat-tolerant, drought-tolerant, and remarkably pest-resistant. It grows in poor soils, it grows in hot, dry climates where other crops struggle, and it produces an almost absurd volume of seed. One plant can yield up to 50,000 seeds in a single season. Those seeds can be popped like tiny popcorn, ground into flour, cooked as a hot cereal, or stirred into soups for thickening and protein. Growing amaranth. Direct sow amaranth seeds on the soil surface after your last frost date, since they need light to germinate and should not be buried. Thin to about 18 inches apart once seedlings are established. Beyond that, they largely take care of themselves. Water during the driest stretches and watch them climb. Harvest seed heads when they begin to dry and the tiny seeds start to release when you rub the head between your palms. Cut the heads, place them upside down in paper bags, and allow them to finish drying. Thresh and winnow to separate seed from chaff. Store the clean, dry seed in sealed containers. Seed number 6. Swiss chard. Beta vulgaris var. Cycla. Varieties like Rainbow, Fodhook Giant, or Lucullus. The 6th seed on our list is a quietly reliable workhorse that deserves far more attention than it typically gets in survival gardening conversations. Swiss chard. Swiss chard is closely related to the beet, and like the beet, almost the entire plant is edible. The leaves cook down like spinach, rich and tender. The stems, particularly in rainbow varieties, are thick, crunchy, and can be cooked separately or eaten raw. In a garden where nothing goes to waste, chard is a natural fit. What makes chard especially valuable in a survival context is its growing season. It tolerates both spring cold and summer heat better than spinach, which bolts quickly in warm weather. Chard just keeps going. Plant it in spring, harvest it all summer, and if you're in a mild climate, keep cutting it right into fall and early winter. One planting can produce greens for 5 to 6 months, a longer continuous harvest than almost any other green vegetable. My grandmother grew Swiss chard every single year without fail, not because she read about it in a homesteading book, but because her grandmother grew it and her mother's mother before that. It was simply understood to be a reliable, generous plant that would feed the family when other things failed. I think about that quiet, generational knowledge every time I plant it now. There's something worth honoring in that. Nutritional profile. Swiss chard is extraordinarily rich in vitamins K, A, and C, and provides meaningful amounts of magnesium, potassium, and iron. In a diet dominated by calorie-dense staples, chard provides exactly the micronutrient variety that keeps the body functioning well under stress. Growing Swiss chard. Sow seeds directly into the garden 2 to 4 weeks before your last spring frost date. Seeds are actually seed clusters. Each one may sprout 2 to 4 seedlings, so thin to about 9 to 12 inches between plants. Chard prefers full sun, but tolerates partial shade better than most vegetables. Keep it consistently watered for the best leaf quality. For seed saving, chard is biennial. It will flower and set seed in its second year. Overwinter a few plants, allow them to bolt in spring, and collect the seed clusters when fully dry. Like kale, chard seeds store well for 4 to 5 years under proper conditions. We've covered 6 seeds now, and together those 6 form a genuinely powerful survival garden. Calories, protein, vitamins, minerals, greens through summer, roots through winter, and stored grain to bridge the hardest months. But the 2 seeds we're going to talk about now operate on a different level. They don't just feed the body, they protect it. And one of them ensures that all 8 seeds on this list remain available to your family not just this year, but for years and generations to come. These are the seeds that complete the picture. Seed number 7. Sunflower. Helianthus annuus. Varieties like Mammoth Russian, Paradovic, or Black Oil. The sunflower is one of the most cheerful plants you can grow, and also one of the most practical. In a survival seed list, sunflowers earn their place for two primary reasons: food oil and calorie-dense seeds. Let me explain why both matter. First, fat. In a diet built primarily around beans, corn, greens, and squash, there is very little natural fat. And fat is not optional. It's essential for brain function, hormone regulation, nutrient absorption, and sustained energy. The human body needs dietary fat to survive long term. In a prolonged disruption, fat deficiency is a real and serious concern. Sunflower seeds, and particularly the oil pressed from them, address that gap directly. 1 acre of sunflowers grown for oil can yield roughly 100 gallons of pressing oil. Even in a small garden plot, a row of sunflowers can produce several pounds of oilseed, enough to press a meaningful quantity of cooking oil or to eat directly as a calorie and fat-dense food. Ancient peoples across the Americas cultivated sunflowers for exactly this reason, long before most of the crops we think of as staples arrived on this continent. I planted a row of Mammoth Russian sunflowers along our back fence several years ago, partly for beauty, honestly, and partly as a practical experiment. What I didn't expect was how much seed one row would produce. We harvested, dried, and shelled enough to fill 2 large mason jars. We toasted them, seasoned them, ate them as snacks, and pressed a small amount of oil. My children began to understand something important that day, that beautiful things can also be useful things. That has stayed with them. Choosing your variety. For eating and oil production, choose black oil varieties like Paradovic, high in oil content, smaller seeds, exceptionally productive. For roasting and snacking, Mammoth Russian or Giant Gray Stripe produces large, thick-shelled seeds that are satisfying to eat whole. For a survival garden, I recommend having both if you can. Growing sunflowers. Sunflowers are among the easiest crops you'll ever grow. Direct sow after your last frost in full sun. They tolerate poor soil, tolerate drought once established, and ask for very little. Space them 12 to 18 inches apart. Watch them track the sun across the sky when they're young. Wait. Harvesting and storage. When the back of the seed head turns brown and the seeds are fully formed, usually 30 to 45 days after flowering, cut the head with a foot of stem attached. Hang upside down in a dry, ventilated space. Once the seeds are rock hard and release easily when rubbed, they're ready to store. Keep in sealed containers in a cool, dark place. Whole, dry sunflower seeds store for 1 to 2 years at room temperature, longer under refrigeration. For seed saving, simply reserve the largest, healthiest heads from your strongest plants. Let them dry completely before storing seeds for next year's crop. Seed number 8. Calendula. Calendula officinalis, varieties like Resina, Pacific Beauty, or Radio. Our 8th and final seed is one that I feel genuinely passionate about, and one that surprises people most when they see it on a survival list: calendula. At first glance, calendula looks like a flower, and it is, a beautiful one, in shades of gold, amber, and deep orange, blooming tirelessly from late spring all the way through hard frost. But underneath that beauty is one of the most medicinally valuable plants a homesteading family can grow. Let me explain what calendula actually does. Calendula flowers contain compounds, flavonoids, terpenoids, and polysaccharides that make it one of the most researched and traditionally used medicinal herbs in the world. Infused into oil or made into a salve, calendula is a powerful wound healer and skin soother. It is anti-inflammatory, mildly microbial, and extraordinarily gentle, safe for use on children, on sensitive skin, on open wounds, and on irritated mucous membranes. In the absence of commercial first aid supplies, a jar of calendula-infused oil or a well-made calendula salve becomes one of the most valuable things in your home. My family has been using calendula salve for years, for minor cuts, for winter-chapped skin, for insect bites, for my youngest daughter's eczema patches that nothing else seemed to calm. I make a new batch each fall from flowers we've dried through the season. It has become as natural a part of our home as the food in our pantry. In fact, in our house, it is part of the pantry. In a survival scenario, access to commercial medicine becomes uncertain. The ability to make your own effective first aid preparations from a plant you grew yourself in your own garden is not a luxury, it is genuine preparedness. Beyond first aid, calendula flowers are edible. They have a mild, slightly resinous flavor and can be added to salads, rice dishes, soups, and baked goods. Historically, they were called poor man's saffron. Dried petals add color to dishes the way saffron does at no cost. In a survival kitchen where color and variety are scarce, that matters more than it might sound. Calendula tea, made from dried petals, is gentle, warming, and mildly supportive of digestive and immune health. Growing calendula. Calendula is one of the most forgiving plants you'll ever grow. Direct sow in spring, 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost. It tolerates light frost and actually prefers cool growing conditions. In hot summer climates, it may slow down in July and August, then pick up back beautifully in September. Sow in fall in mild climates for winter flowers. The key practice with calendula is deadheading, removing spent blooms regularly. Every bloom you remove prompts the plant to produce 2 more. A well-maintained calendula plant can bloom continuously for 3 to 4 months. In a survival context, more blooms means more medicine. Drying and storing. Harvest flowers when they are fully open, ideally in the morning after dew has dried. Spread on a drying screen or hang in small bundles in a warm, ventilated space away from direct light. Fully dried flowers should be papery and crumble easily when rubbed. Store in sealed glass jars away from light. Properly dried calendula flowers retain their potency for 1 to 2 years. Seed saving. Calendula seeds look like tiny brown or tan crescents. They're hard to miss when you learn to recognize them. Allow sunflower heads to go to seed at the end of the season. Collect when fully dry and store in a cool, dark place. They remain viable for 3 to 5 years. One plant produces dozens of seeds. A single season's collection will supply your garden for years. We've come a long way through this garden today. We started with the foundations, beans, corn, and winter squash, the ancient trio that has fed families through winters longer and harder than most of us will ever face. We moved through the nutrient keepers, kale, amanthus, and Swiss chard, the living pharmacy of your garden, the greens that keep minds clear and bodies strong when the easy options disappear. And we finished with the protectors, sunflowers for fat and fuel, and calendula for medicine and healing. 8 seeds, not 800, not an overwhelming vault of every variety you could imagine. 8 seeds, chosen because they are proven, beginner accessible, storable, nutritionally complete, and suited to the philosophy of this channel. The philosophy is simply this: real self-sufficiency is built slowly, deliberately, and practically. It doesn't require perfection. It doesn't require a large piece of land. It doesn't require a crisis to motivate you. It just requires a decision. The decision to learn something, to grow something, to prepare something before you need it. You have everything you need to start, and if you start with these 8 seeds, you will have started well. If this video gave you something useful today, a new crop to try, a variety to order, a reason to feel a little more prepared, then it did exactly what we hoped it would do. Here at the Provident Acre, this is what we do. Every week we bring you calm, practical, family-friendly guidance on growing your own food, building your own stores, and learning the skills that used to be common knowledge and that we believe should be again. If you're not subscribed yet, now is a great time to do that. Hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you don't miss what we have coming next. And before you go, drop a comment below and let us know which of these 8 seeds are you already growing and which one are you adding to your list this season. We read every comment and we love hearing from this community. Until next time, keep your hands in the soil, your pantry stocked, and your family close. This is the Provident Acre. We'll see you in the next one.